Hi, I'm Hayley and I work for Essex Wildlife Trust in their ecological department, Essex Ecology Services. Today we are going to do an ecological assessment of my garden so that we can assess the habitat there and therefore the plants and the animals within it. Now, what a lot of people can do when they're looking at habitat, such as walking through a forest or a garden or a park, is they can simply just say, oh, it's just trees, it's just grass, there's nothing else there. They're not looking at the clues, they're not looking closer. Being an ecologist is a bit like being a detective. So today we're going to put our ecological detective hats on and we're going to identify what plants and animals are present in my garden. Okay, so this is our habitat where we're going to be ecological detectives. So it's my garden. And first of all, let's get an overall picture. Well, I'd say a lot of people would look at this and say, well, it's a patch of grass and some trees and fences. But we want to look a bit closer than that because grass is quite the coverall term and quite often there's a lot more than just grass species within that grassland habitat. So let's go closer. Okay, so let's look a bit closer. I can see here in this patch at least 4 different things. So we've got here the common daisy. I'm sure a lot of you recognise this. I mean, it's not very open at the moment because it's been quite wet and cold the last few days. But would you be able to recognise this if it was winter and the flower wasn't here? Well, I'm sure you would, but you just wouldn't know you was looking at it. So these leaves here, which can look quite matted in the grass, are actually part of the daisy. So if it was winter, you'd know what you're looking at. We've also got dandelion. So yeah, again, there's the flower, which I'm sure a lot of you know. But you want to look at the leaves as well. So got these nice leaves here, so nice and separated. Also got spotted medic, got red dead nettle. It's in the dead nettle family. It looks like stinging nettles almost, but it doesn't sting. It's a dead nettle. We got yarrow, which this isn't in flower at the moment, but when it does get in flower, it gets a really nice big umbellifer. So this is quite a nice common one. So already, just looking in the tiniest patch of grass, we can see quite a few flowering plants that would attract quite a few invertebrates. Over here at the cherry tree, we can see we've got some different kind of plants from what we've got in the grass. So this is a much shadier spot, so we're getting a different sward of plants. Over here we've got a crucifer type plant. We know it's crucifer because the leaves are in cross sort of shape. It's flowering. Now, you might recognise this, it's been in another of our videos. It's garlic mustard. Now if you were to rub those, give your fingers a little sniff, I realise you can't see me when I did that, it will smell like garlic. And this is actually the larval food plant of the orange tip butterfly. So again, we know we've got another plant that is attracting invertebrate life. So we can start thinking about the bigger picture about what this means. We've got a lot of plants which are attracting food sources for other animals, things that eat invertebrates. We've got birds and bats, for instance, and reptiles. So that makes us think about those type of animals. So, thinking about bats first, we want to think about, would bats even be here? Well, when you do a habitat survey, you look at your immediate surroundings as well. Now, I know you can't see my immediate surroundings and don't know where I live, but just behind this wall is the River Colne. So, I live very close to a river. Bats love to traverse rivers. They are a nice linear habitat, good for navigating, and also it's full of invertebrate life, so it's a great food source for them to hunt. So yes, bats would likely be here, so we know that they have the potential to be here. Next we want to look at, could they roost here? Would they stop here? So we'll look at my tree first, and then we'll look at the house and see if there's any potential. Okay, so this is the tree in my garden. It's a cherry tree. Cherry trees are typically not the best trees for roosting bats because they are quite a sappy tree. I mean, just look here where this tree has been cut before. There's this rock hard sap that's been exuded. But it doesn't mean that if there is a nook or a cranny or a hole that there is absolutely no potential a bat could get in there. So we still look. So if we just look on the branches for any types of cracks, holes, broken branches, anywhere a little bat could get in. Okay, so nothing there. Nothing on this branch. And if we look close at this, I mean, there's a bit of sap coming out of this, so that's quite sticky. So if that was to form an actual crevice a bat could crawl into, a bat really wouldn't want to get that on its wings because they're so fine. So this actually has no potential for use by a roosting bat. Okay, so then we go look at the house. So when you're looking at the house, you want to look at all the tiles, you want to look at the soffits and the fascia boards and the windows, and you really want to look to see if there are any cracks or holes, anything a bat could get into, any of that covering, lifting, just anything. What you can see by looking at this house is everything is nice and intact and there is no potential for a bat to get in. So unfortunately, there is no potential in this habitat for a bat to roost. Okay, so that was us talking about how bats could potentially use the garden to hunt. Now, would birds likely nest here now that we know that they've got some food sources here? Well, there is a tree, so there is the potential they could nest here. There isn't any currently, and there are, behind this wall where the river is, there are quite a lot of bramble bushes and blackthorn, so they make great habitat for birds to nest in, and there's no path there or anything, so it's lovely and undisturbed. So it's highly likely that birds could nest there. And I found in my garden, when I was doing the little grassland inspection, this eggshell. So it looks a bit like a pigeon egg to me, I'm not 100%, but it's not from a nest, I don't think, because there's no nests around where we are, so it's not like you've just been kicked out of a nest by a bird. But what this eggshell does tell us is there are nesting birds near here. So like I said, may not be doing it in this garden right now, but there is potential for nesting birds to be here. So you would be forgiven for just looking at this garden and thinking, nope, there is no suitability for reptiles to be here. I mean, for one thing, the grass is short, so that's not the best habitat for them, it's quite low quality. And this longer section is quite small. But we do get just a very small population of 1 or 2 common lizards at the back of the garden here, very rarely. And that is because I told you to look at the wider vicinity, so we know the river colne is just behind this wall, and that means there's lots of invertebrate life. We get a lot of spiders, a lot of flies and things because of that. So whilst the habitat is quite low suitability, there is the potential, whilst slim, for the reptiles to be here. Finally, we are going to think about, could there be hedgehogs in this garden? Now, when you look at this fence, it looks quite naff, to be honest. It's got the concrete base and we've got a brick wall, so not many animals can pass these things. But what have we got here? We've got a little hole something has dug. And there is one on the other side as well. So there is potential for animals to move through this garden. So whilst we haven't seen a hedgehog yet, it doesn't mean they can't come in here at night and forage. From this brief look at the garden, we've already discovered there's lots of food sources for invertebrate life, which therefore means there's food for bats, birds, reptiles, hedgehogs, there's access for these animals, there's potential places for some of them to nest. There's a variety of things here that, whilst you can't see these animals, there are many clues indicating that they could be here and they have the potential to use this habitat. And you can use these clues absolutely anywhere to discover other animals and other wildlife.